The New York Gubernatorial Debate, sponsored by CBS 2 and WCBS News Radio 880. Here is your moderator, CBS 2's Marcia Kramer.
From the CBS Broadcast Center, the candidates for governor of New York face off to discuss critical issues facing nearly 20 million people. Welcome to the one and only debate for the highest office in the Empire State. Joining me is Rich Lamb from WCBS News Radio 880, along with the candidates, Governor Andrew Cuomo,
Larry Sharpe. He is the 2018 Libertarian candidate for New York State Governor,
and Republican Marc Molinaro. The first question, because there was a toss, will go to the governor. But gentlemen, first, a quick review of the guidelines. There are no opening or closing statements. You'll have 1 minute to answer a question and 30 seconds for rebuttal when warranted. And Governor Cuomo, as I said, you won the toss, so you get the first question.
All right.
There we go. For many, the cost of living in New York State is just too damn high. Why can't you trim the $168 billion budget and give people some tax relief? You know, big businesses often cut their budgets by 5% to save money but not hurt their core functions. So would you commit to doing that and pass the savings on to your taxpayers?
Yeah. Well, first, thank WCBS and 880 for sponsoring this debate. I heard that line somewhere before, it's just too damn high.
It's just too damn high.
I can't remember where I heard it. You are exactly right. The cost of taxes, the cost of doing business in the state of New York is just too high, and it has been for many, many years. The formula is simple. If you want to lose weight, eat less, right? That's the formula. It's just hard to do it. It's the discipline to do it. What we have done over the past 7 years, Marcia, is we have cut state spending to the lowest increases in modern political history. Our increases are now down to 2%. That is lower than any governor in modern history. Lower than Democrats, Republicans, George Pataki, who called himself a conservative. We're down to 2%. That allowed us to cut taxes. Middle-class taxes are now down to the lowest level since 1947. Corporate taxes, 1968. Manufacturing taxes, 1917. But that's only half the story. The real state tax are the property taxes. It's 3 times the state income tax. And we have to get local governments to control their property taxes. For example, Dutchess County, my opponent over 7 years raised property taxes 58%. That has to stop. I passed a 2% cap on counties. The 2% cap on counties Governor, and the state cap is making a difference.
But I have a follow-up question before we get to Mr. Molinaro, because you keep saying that you've cut government spending, but it still goes up. And what we're asking you to do is to commit to spending less, period, so that the money can go to taxpayers.
Look, I am been accused in the Democratic...
And you have 30 seconds.
I've been accused, as you know, in the Democratic primary, because you were there, and I think you accused me of being too fiscally moderate, because I have the first spending cap in the state history. Only 2%. Think of it. My rate of spending is less than George Pataki, who called himself a Republican conservative. I am always working to reduce cost further, get those taxes down. We have to. But 3 times the taxes come from the counties, and that's what we have to focus on.
And we're going to let Mr. Molinaro respond.
Absolutely, and thank you all for hosting us. Governor, were that only true? In fact, your budgets have increased spending at about an annual rate of 4% each year. So despite the fact that you continue to suggest that you've been able to hold the 2%, you haven't. And what you've talked about in trying to drive down local property taxes is dishonest. This state forces more state spending onto local property taxpayers than any state in the country, which means local property taxes, school districts, counties, towns, villages, fire districts are arbitrarily high because you have not been willing to take on the responsibility of driving down those costs. I'm committing today, as we have during the campaign, to reducing property taxes 30% over 5 years. It's achievable. It's possible. If only Albany were to control the spending and reduce what it forces down onto property taxpayers. Now, as far as it relates to my record, it's nice to talk about what happened 20 years ago or 15 years ago, but in the last 7 years as Dutchess County executive, we've been able to streamline county government, we've modernized and delivered efficiencies, and we now have cut property taxes each of the last 4 years. And on Monday, I release a budget that cuts property taxes for the 5th straight year in a row.
Mr. Molinaro, the time is up.
It's a great question, Marcia. And first, I want to thank WCBS for not inviting me to this debate. It shows exactly what establishment lackeys you are and gives me the great opportunity to do this. So, His Majesty in his glory has said that he's been so good in that his increases are the lowest increases. That's how he does cutting. So his cutting is still increasing. But not just that. He just blamed the counties. They spend too much. They need to cut the spending, right? They're eating too much. He's put unfunded mandates onto the counties, 85, 90, 95% of their budget. He's deciding what they spend the money on. I have an idea. How about we instead let the counties choose what they spend the money on? Start their budgets at maybe zero so they can actually figure out what's good for them. And maybe they could actually change how they spend their money. I'm talking about cutting the responsibility of the counties to take Medicaid. Drop that by 25% for the next 4 years. Let the state take on some of that burden and lower the cost of Medicaid with health care and health care insurance. We do that. That's real taxpayer relief.
Rich Lamb has the next question.
Mr. Molinaro, can I just make a comment because he accused me of you're making up numbers again like you make up facts all the time. I'm not, sir. Right? There is no 4% increase. It's been 2%. It's been documented. You were in the county legislature for 7 years. You voted to increase property taxes 58%. I didn't. Live with it. You were in the county legislature for 7 years. Let me finish.
You going to let him shut you up like that and then call him sir?
You voted to increase county spending 45%. That's where the taxes come from.
No, sir.
County government and county government spending.
The governor now has monopolized 2 minutes, and he's now so I'd like a rebuttal. They aren't, sir. And the reason that county spending increased during those years, with all due respect, is because this state government, before we imposed finally a Medicaid cap, continued to force state spending until. Excuse me, sir. Let me finish.
Reduced your spending.
No, it didn't.
And it kept going up.
No, no, sir. It did not. Listen. You could make up numbers if you wish, but I served in the county legislature.
Medicaid cap reduce your spending?
Governor, first of all, the years that you're referring to, you were not governor. I've been in office since 1995. Let me finish my thought, sir. We were able to hold spending in county government, but mandated expenditures continue to rise. Now, to the same point, we also saw economic growth at that time. So the average tax bill for Dutchess County taxpayers, while I was a member of the county legislature, decreased. But over the last 8 years, we've seen total economic stagnancy, which means communities aren't getting the assessed valuation growth and property taxes aren't going down. I will commit to 30% reduction over 5 years.
We're going to move on. Rich Lamb has the next question.
You raised cell phone taxes. You raised utility taxes. You spend more. You call yourself a fiscal conservative. You're a fiscal fraud. I've done more fiscally than Republican conservative governors, and you know it.
Wow, he just called you a fraud. This governor has done more than any other governor to completely destroy this state in every way, shape, or form. Morally, physically, financially, any way you could imagine. He's the one who's Here's the thing that no one talks about. The entire issue of property taxes. The problem is the legislature's, that's the one who votes on it. You want to make this better? You want to fix this situation? Stop listening to these two guys talk and instead make one important change. Make it that all property tax has to be voted on by the people. In November, you've got to put it on the ballot and let someone all of a sudden do 9% or 10% property tax. It'll never happen. That will stop property taxes from being raised. But one more thing. His Majesty says, oh, 2%, I put a 2% cap on property tax. First off, why are you putting a cap on anything? That's number one. But you did something else. You allowed for a loophole that once they say crisis, they can raise it to whatever they want. And that's what keeps happening. So what you just did is you made it to where you've said it's a 2% cap, so you're the savior. But you've put them in a situation to where there are so many mandates, they have to go into crisis mode. So now they raise it more than 2%. You act like you've helped, you've just hurt. This is your fault.
Governor, we have to move on. Rich Lamb.
I'd just like to get a question here edgewise. Mr. Molinaro, your Republican Party's hallmark is tax cuts. Your Republican president just got tax reform passed that impacts New Yorkers most negatively, greatly reducing state and local tax deductions or SALT. How do you explain that to the New York homeowner who owes thousands more in taxes now?
I explain it today as I did when the bill passed. I opposed the SALT deduction cap because it did put us, certainly high-tax states, at a competitive disadvantage. It also abandoned what had been a commitment since the Civil War. But the problem in New York is that we tax too much. We force too much spending onto school districts, onto towns, villages, and counties. And even within the city of New York, property taxes continue to make us less competitive. And the governor has done nothing to reduce the cost, enabling us to reduce property taxes. I will. The other is we identify ways in our Empire Freedom Plan that we would provide real relief to taxpayers. This state taxes you incrementally. So if you make $1 more than a tax bracket, this state penalizes you for 100% of your income. I say that's inappropriate. And by changing that tax law, we'll provide meaningful relief. At the same time, with all due respect, the governor over the last several years has been threatening Republican members of Congress all across the state of New York. I want to work with Republicans and Democrats to get the SALT deduction reestablished, restored, so that we have real relief for New York taxpayers.
Governor, your rebuttal?
I've worked with Democrats and Republicans for 7 years. I passed 7 budgets on time in a row. That hasn't happened since Governor Nelson Rockefeller. I have no problem working with Democrats and Republicans. I do have a problem with what my opponent represents and is happening in Washington, these extreme conservative, divisive people who are anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ, and it's just anti-New York. It is just not true to say I support half of the SALT bill, but not the increase on the New York taxes.
Okay,
excuse me 1 second, Marcia, this is important.
Marcia, you got to be quiet. Mr. I respect women, he's mansplaining.
That's how they pay for the tax bill. When you say you supported Trump's SALT bill,
I didn't.
You put your political
Governor,
loyalty...
I've never said that. I've never said it, and you continue to lie about it.
You just said you did.
I said that I opposed the cap on SALT deductions. Please, I've said it now multiple times.
You can't support half a bill. You know that. That's how we financed the tax cut for the rich, was by taking away our deduction. That's how the bill worked. You're a legislator. You can't say, I support half the bill, but not the other half.
I've never said it, Governor.
Yes, SALT is a problem in New York State because we have a state income tax. If we were able to get rid of our state income tax, SALT wouldn't affect us anymore. That's why what I want to do is work to get rid of our state income tax within 4 years. Slowly phase it out within 4 years, and then SALT won't affect us at all.
Okay, we're going to move on now to another question for Governor Cuomo and the ever-popular MTA. Governor, since the MTA uses 4 times the number of workers on subway projects than any other city, for efficiency's sake, you clearly have to slash labor costs to make scarce dollars go further. How will you do it without angering the unions who support you and also avoid a strike? Now, I want to point out to you and ask you, is it acceptable for unions to have jobs like nippers who watch materials being moved around and hog house tenders who man the break rooms?
I don't think I've ever met a nipper. I don't think I've ever met a hog.
But they exist.
What a hog? What
on the MTA
call?
Projects, under 2nd Avenue Subway and other projects.
What was it? Hog what?
Hog house tenders.
Hog house tenders.
Do you really need those kind of jobs?
I thought I knew what I was talking about.
You don't.
Obviously, there's going to be waste and abuse in these programs, and we can do better.
Is it acceptable?
Of course not. And you've watched my performance for 7 years.
So how do you rein in the unions?
I'll tell you. No one. First of all, there have been unions that have been mad at me for 7 years. You know it very well. The most powerful unions in the state have been mad at me.
But not the transit union.
Yeah, the most powerful unions in the state have been. I have no problem angering a union when it comes between doing the right thing by the people and doing the right thing by a union. I'm the most aggressive governor when it comes to building in the country, $100 billion.
His Majesty just said proudly, he said, I am the greatest builder, $100 billion. Since when is a governor a builder? What are you, emperor of the Egyptian empire? What is wrong with you? You're not a builder. You're supposed to be a facilitator. Other people build, businesses build, people build, not you. Your $100 billion is not your money. It's our money.
New JFK Airport, new LaGuardia Airport, new airports in Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, etc. I will take on the MTA. I have no problem ducking responsibility.
Yeah, you duck responsibility all the time. Absolutely. You're really good at it.
It's a question of funding. The mayor doesn't want to pay. The state legislature, my opponent, voted against $7 billion in MTA funding. You need the funding. My opponent endorsed my plan, but it's about the funding, and we need the money.
Mr. Molinaro, how would you get the unions to get in line and to cut jobs and to cut waste?
First of all, the governor's abandoned responsibility for the MTA, and we've seen it in a total death spiral over the course of the last several years.
Stop stealing my death spiral thing.
With on-time rates declining, with those living with disabilities not being able to access subway platforms. We see the continued delay, and it hurts real people, Governor. And the political game that you continue to play with the city of New York.
But how do you do it? How do you do it?
The political game that continues to get played with the city of New York means that no one's solving the problem. First, take ownership. The state of New York is responsible for the New York City transit system, period. Absolutely. So our plan is this. First, take leadership responsibility and wipe clean those people who are in leadership today that have entanglements and conflicts of interest. And then you identify with the unions that there are significant savings that can be had, and by achieving those savings, we'll share it with the unionized employees and with the users and invest in the system. We have to make the system function, and it isn't.
That's not an answer at all. We'll just make things better.
It's the lifeblood of the city, and the governor said it just now. He said it just now. The problem with the MTA is it needs more money. We pay 8 separate taxes to the most bloated public authority in the world, and users, riders depend on the system, which means we need to make it effective, efficient, and less expensive.
This blows my mind. Both of them complained, and all they said was, it needs more money, it needs more money. No one actually answered the question, which is, how do we fix it, how do we make it better? This is the hard part. How do we fix the MTA? The MTA is $16 billion. We give $6 billion every single year to it because it sucks so badly. It's a disaster. The MTA will get no extra money from me whatsoever. I'm not going to fund it and give this bad system even more money. I'm not going to tax New Yorkers even more. No, I'm going to give it other ways to raise money so it can actually survive on its own. Over time, it will be self-sustainable. Okay, how? Number one, we actually have rail lines that go out to Long Island, upstate, into the city. At night, they're hardly used at all. Why aren't they freight lines? These should be freight lines. Freight forwarders can pay us to actually use these freight lines, less wear and tear in the city, less truck traffic in the city, cheaper for everybody, faster. They pay us. They help to keep the lines good. Not just that, we can actually name some of the hubs after them, the Home Depot Rail Hub, or whatever the case may be. That will give us a way to raise money by bringing freight into the city. Better service, more money. That's option one. Option two, we have infrastructure that we are wasting. We have the RFK bridge. Why isn't it that the Verizon bridge, or the Apple bridge, or the Google bridge? We could name these bridges, leasing naming rights out, so they can raise money, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million for a bridge that's named hundreds of times every single day during rush hour, crossed by hundreds of thousands of cars, and mentioned in a 16 million person metro area. There's what, 6, 8, 9 bridges and tunnels in the MTA right now, just the MTA? Now the MTA can raise money through leasing naming rights. It will pay less for wear and tear, lowering the costs. It can also raise money through freight. Finally, you do that, that raises enough money to where now the actual people in the MTA, you said it, sometimes 4 times as bad as every other city. Here's what we do. We copy the other cities, literally cut and paste. There are tons of cities throughout this world that actually have unions and safety, and we copy them. How do we keep unions happy? By copying union rules from other cities. There's unions throughout the entire world. Cut and paste will make them the people safe and more efficient, saving money and finding ways to raise money without any extra taxes, and we'll have a better MTA.
My colleague here has a question for you.
So may I just go one thing, just to correct the record, just as facts matter once in a while. What my opponent fails to answer is, you're not going to find this money, Marcia, in just cutting the waste.
He's right. You're not going to just find that money. You are simply going to have to keep punishing New Yorkers to take that money away from them. That's his answer. Keep punishing New Yorkers. No, we're not going to tax our way out of this, and that's what he always wants.
It's $30 billion.
No, I'm sorry.
And
no, I'm sorry.
Yes, so that's what we need.
But what you just acknowledged is that even $1,000 means something. But you know, you declared a state. You've declared. Well, you didn't. You just said that that we're not going to find the savings. But there were.
No, I said you're not going to find $30 billion to fund the plan.
It is. First of all, your MTA costs 5 and 6 times more to lay a mile of track than it does anywhere else in the world, which means we're wasting dollars.
I just explained how to fix that. Were you not paying attention?
And the savings need to go back into the system. But, Governor, what is equally important is that when you declared a state of emergency to solve the problem, it's gotten progressively worse. And at the same time...
That's not true.
That is so true. The MTA is a disaster, and you don't know because you don't get on it. You're too busy on your helicopter.
It is true, and at the same time, we know there were hundreds of employees brought in to work on the MTA, and nobody knew what their jobs were. There needs to be accountability. Taxpayers and consumers and commuters deserve it. We see the deterioration of our commuter train stations as well.
That is not true. You have never seen a governor take more responsibility for the MTA than I have.
Yes, I know.
I declared the state of emergency. You never saw George Pataki go near it.
I'm not George Pataki. You seem obsessed with him.
But
Governor,
well, because he's another Republican, and Governor, he is a point.
But Governor, you rushed the second
emergency action plan. I said to New York City, pay half the funding. They refused. I went to the state legislature. I got the full plan funded. Performance is increasing.
It is not, sir.
Please stop calling him sir. He's completely wrong. And yes, service is worse.
You were in the legislature, you voted against $7 billion in MTA funding, and that's why we are where we are today.
Taxing people more is not the answer, Marcia, until and unless the state takes responsibility for the waste, the abuse, and the lack of accountability. You rushed the opening of the 2nd Avenue subway, and they didn't even have fire alarms in the system. So my point with you, Governor, is it's about establishing the outcomes and focus on
fire alarms. You wouldn't have gotten a building code.
They didn't.
You need to fight waste. It's not 30 or $40 billion. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so the next question actually is going to go to you, Governor Cuomo.
I thought he was getting the next question.
I know, but you guys, you erased him. You erased him.
Wow, she just said it. You just erased him. Wow.
Oh. So here we go. People sometimes call the state's ethics commission, whose initials are J-Cope, they call it J-Joke. It's been said the state's current ethics body lacks teeth to fight corruption. Would you support putting control of the state Joint Ethics Commission in the hands of the independently elected State Attorney General, New York's chief law enforcement officer?
The AG, which I know because I was the Attorney General, already has jurisdiction. J-Cope is the first time the legislature agreed to an outside body to do any ethics review.
But is it really outside when it's all appointed by the legislature?
I'll get to that.
Marcia, please. He's mansplaining.
It was always purely internal. The legislature said nobody has a right. J-Cope was the first time you had an outside entity. I agree that it was a good first step, and I believe in the thin edge of the wedge. I believe we need more independence on J-Cope. I believe
we need... So what form does the independence take?
A totally independent appointees and not necessarily representatives of both houses. I'd be open to a number of configurations.
Like?
But they have to be independent.
You right now appoint 6.
I'd have the Attorney General involved. I'd have the Chief Judge involved in appointing the members. We started, and change starts with the thin edge of the wedge, but now we have to have more independent appointees.
We're going to get...
So we have to start still. 8 years as governor, and you haven't figured out how to make things not corrupt in 8 years? 8 years is not enough time? Look, the answer is an office of transparency. That's what you want. The key here isn't some appointed cronies and party loyalists that you put up to decide who is bad and who's not bad. The idea is making everything transparent so the actual AG can see everything and know what is bad and know what's happening, and the people can see it also and hold the AG accountable. I will create an office of transparency right away so that, guess what, when you actually have a FOIA request, when you actually want to see what your local government is actually doing, you'll get to see it. These boards will begin to go away. These ideas of your friends deciding what's right and wrong will go away. Office of Transparency, that's our answer.
Molinaro have a rebuttal.
Governor, you have led the most corrupted state government in America. 8 individuals closely associated with your administration are now going to jail or have gone to jail for federal corruption charges. At what point after 8 years of being in office do you take responsibility, or at least admit you either...
Please let him try to stumble through his answer.
You have benefited politically from it, or you have no clue what's going on within the administration. This is what is stealing from taxpayers. You have allowed individuals in this administration to defraud taxpayers. And anywhere else in America, no governor could possibly be running for re-election. And Marc and Rich, the point is that at the end of the day, corruption steals from real people. From real people. You raised $101 million over 8 years in exchange for $50 billion worth of state expenditures.
Time is up, and Mr. Molinaro, you get the next question.
Thank you.
No, okay. Marcia, I have to have a rebuttal to what he just said because it was false and it was all ad hominem.
15 seconds. You get 15 seconds.
Marcia, this was ad hominem and it was serious.
Marcia, His Majesty put his hand up. That means, woman, be quiet.
For you to say, in your situation, to point fingers, yes, people in my administration made a mistake, they went to jail. Your county legislature is calling for an investigation on you for kickbacks and perjury, where you gave a contract to a vendor and then a family member got a job and they got another contract. That's your own county legislature asking for a criminal investigation of you. So I wouldn't point fingers.
Oh, I get it. So you're saying he's as corrupt as you.
I find that entirely ridiculous. And by the way, Governor...
Is it not factual?
It is. Listen, Governor...
What's not factual?
Let me finish my sentence.
Yeah.
We're not going to... First of all, what you described has been demonstrably proven false. False, sir. And it is highly, highly hypocritical at best for you. Your chief assistant, Joe Percoco, making phone calls from your very office.
This is your family member putting money in your pocket. This is a bribe or a kickback
it is
you
not,
took.
Sir, it is not. It's been demonstrably proven false. And
Rich,
I'd like to finish this
thought. Did the money go in your pocket?
No, sir. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Or the Tinkerman employees' salary didn't go in your pocket after you had given them a contract and then gave them a second contract? And then you failed to disclose it?
Your Majesty, please stop kicking this dog. Just leave him alone. Just let him go. Let him try. Just let him try. It's embarrassing.
Rich asked the question. Rich has a question.
The governor leveled a charge, and he has been now speaking almost without pause.
Just tell me what's false.
Joe Percoco making 800 phone calls from your very office, exchanging...
Yes, he made phone calls. He shouldn't have.
While you were there, sir.
How about
Let me finish.
Kickback?
Is this what we do all day?
Marc, are you now asking for help?
Let me finish my thought before you finish it.
I understand about Joe Percoco. This is about you and me.
You're right.
No one's saying I did anything wrong. They're saying you took a kickback.
He's not going to let you finish your thought because he doesn't respect you. Yet you keep calling him sir. Get the message.
Gentlemen, let me stop this. Right, will you both change pay to play?
Yes. Yes,
How?
the day.
How?
Oh, come on! The governor established a Moreland Commission, and it was supposed to root out corruption. And when it found it was going on in his own administration, he canned it. I will absolutely reestablish a Moreland Commission. I will ask people like Zephyr Teachout and Preet Bharara to serve. I will use that as the tool to hold back the forces in Albany who think it's okay to defraud people. But, sir, your administration. 8, 9 individuals now found guilty. You can't possibly expect the voters of the state of New York to believe that you had no idea. The exchange of state-funded taxpayer resources for campaign contributions. Crystal Run getting $25 million worth of state aid for a project already underway in exchange for campaign contributions. Sir, it is highly ridiculous to think for a moment that you are going to change that now.
You know why the people would believe it? Because it was a 2-year investigation, and every U.S. attorney said I had nothing to do with anything. I did absolutely nothing wrong. Said. Meanwhile, you're the one who is being called on for an investigation for a kickback that went into your pocket.
That is not true.
Where you had a family member employed by a contractor who you gave a contract, and then you lied about it on the disclosure form. And you cannot deny it.
I certainly
and that's a crime, my friend.
Sir,
And that's you.
Crystal
That's
Run.
not Joe, Sally, Jilly. It's Marc Molinaro.
That is untrue, sir.
So why in the world would any New Yorker right now, Republican or Democrat, reward this behavior? Why would you do that? You have a choice. These guys who simply yell, I'm more corrupt than you, you're more corrupt than me, who's more corrupt? Or someone who's not part of this establishment?
Yeah. I have to leap in with a question for the governor.
Wow, Rich, thank you for saving him. This was getting bloody. I'm glad you saved him.
So, Governor, we all see the tragedy of homeless people living on the streets every day. Many suffer from mental illness, yet police are prohibited by state law from removing them except under the most extreme conditions. Would you support changing the state law to allow police to take homeless people off the street against their will to get them help and shelter for their safety and the safety of others?
Rich, I've worked with the homeless population, as you know, all my life. It's a very difficult issue. And there's two sides to it. It's the legal side of when do you bring a person in against their will? That runs right into a civil liberties and civil rights conversation that is very important to all New Yorkers. The law says when the weather reaches a point where you could endanger their lives, then you can bring them in. I believe the problem is they're smart. They don't want to go into the shelters because the shelters are unsafe. If we make shelters safer with more services, people will come in. They don't want, I've talked to them for 20 years. They don't want to sleep on a park bench in Grand Central. They really don't. But the shelters are unsafe. And that's where we have to focus, making the shelters safer with services so we get the people out of situations that they don't want to be in.
Governor, your time is up. Mr. Molinaro, do you have a 30-second rebuttal?
I think I get a minute to answer the question. I would hope. I mean,
No, it's my question, and you get a 30-second rebuttal, I think, is the rule.
What we need to invest in the mental health services that have been dismantled over the course of the last 2 decades. That means ensuring that those who live on the street have the support of state and local governments. And what Albany needs to do is to coordinate our response. That means crisis intervention training, mental health first aid. It means making sure that those who are struggling with addiction, mental illness, have the support structure necessary. Certainly, shelters need to be safe. But at the same time, the governor has allowed the dismantling of mental health services, people finding their way to the streets when they really need help. And what we do in my county, and I want us to do statewide, is a comprehensive response to really strike at the stigma related to mental health and provide long-term support.
This is a great question. Thank you, Rich. It is important. Look, the homeless situation is tough because if you've dealt with homeless people, and particularly I know because as a vet, a high percentage of homeless people are veterans. After about a year or two, depending upon the individual, there's a point to where they don't want help anymore. And it's hard to actually say you want to force someone to get into getting help. So I get the law. I understand that. You care about someone's civil liberties. The answer is almost what they've talked about, right? They've talked the idea about mental health, which is what the Republicans always talk about. That's the issue. Democrats talk about spending more money on shelters. The reality of it is facilitating the nonprofit world to do what it does best, help people in need. If we use government to not try to build the best shelter, which would just put more people in shelters, but we instead use the government to facilitate nonprofits for getting people off the streets, giving them opportunity, giving them teaching, giving them the skills they need to get back out there. But not just that, letting them be out if they want to, touching them to give them help, and allowing them to come in when they're ready to come in. That's the key issue. Who does that best? Nonprofits. We facilitate that. We can help fix our homeless problem.
At the same time, Marcia, it means we also have to ensure that we help those who are living with developmental disabilities. Their population has skyrocketed in homeless shelters, and we need to support those individuals as well.
Just 1 second.
Marcia.
This is so hypocritical for you to sit here, an acolyte of Donald Trump, mini-me of Donald Trump, who is decimating health care in this state, taking health care from poor people, cutting Medicaid, cutting mental health services, removing health insurance from close to 1 million New Yorkers and say the answer is more health care service.
Okay, Mr. Molinaro, 15 seconds.
I'm surprised it took him this long to go there. But, sir, I've been in elected office for a very long time. I was in office before you. I was in office before Mr. Trump.
You're a lifetime politician, we know.
Yeah, you're both lifetime politicians. We both know, absolutely.
Your private law firm represented Mr. Trump and his real estate interests before state agencies while your father was governor. You accepted $60,000 from Donald Trump and haven't returned it. You, when you were trying to make friends with the president when he first came to office, told him you wouldn't run against him. And you, sir, had him at your bachelor party. I didn't. So at the end of the day, sir, I have a long record of committing to help those who are most vulnerable. I grew up on food stamps.
Are you saying you don't support Donald Trump?
I'm saying that I'm absolutely committed to the delivery of mental health service.
Do you support Donald Trump?
Let's get out of this conversation.
Do you support Donald Trump?
Answer him. Do you support Donald Trump?
I support anyone who is going to effectively make an investment.
Do you support Donald Trump? Do you support Donald Trump?
Mr. Molinaro,
you can't answer it. You have answered it because your ad on TV says, I vote conservative for Marc Molinaro and stand with Donald Trump. So you may as well have said it here.
Okay, great. I just wish you would answer because it doesn't matter to most New Yorkers. If you do support Donald Trump or you don't support Donald Trump, does that make any New Yorker better? Does that pull a homeless person off the street? I thought we were talking about that, not about whether we love Donald Trump or not. Does that make any farmer all of a sudden have a better farm? Does that make someone's business become more viable? Does that give someone a better education? Does it give anyone a better opportunity? Does that bring someone's loved one back from North Carolina, South Carolina, or Florida? Does it help anybody in any way, shape, or form? This is just more distraction. I hate Trump. I hate Cuomo. I hate Trump. I hate Cuomo. How about New Yorkers? What you're showing is you don't care about New Yorkers.
Today, under this president and this federal government, America has the most competitive economy in the world, and New York State lags behind.
I support Donald Trump.
I support every effort.
Just tell the truth.
Every effort to ensure.
Just say I support Donald Trump.
I support every effort to that this president wants to invest.
You won't say you support the president.
Gentlemen,
Amazing.
Gentlemen, we're going to move on. Mr. Molinaro, you get the next question. It's about cash bail. Should New York State eliminate cash bail for low-risk criminal defendants like California and New Jersey already do? The argument is that cash bail discriminates against poor defendants who must remain in jail awaiting trial while the wealthy walk free. Opponents say that changing law gives a judge too much discretion regarding the defendant's flight risk or danger to the public. Where do you come down on this issue?
I think the judiciary does have to have a degree of discretion to ensure that individuals who pose a risk to society or themselves don't end up out on our streets, which is a major concern all across the state. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that I think law enforcement has a real concern about this governor's parole board and his willingness to pardon the most violent offenders in our society.
So that's no answer. So I get that. Let me tell you what we have to worry about here. The reality of it is cash bail is a huge problem. At the same time, risk to the public is a problem. What happens if someone's spouse is arrested and they may want to go back and hurt their spouse? That's a problem. If you have an issue and you think someone is either dangerous or a flight risk, how about an ankle bracelet? If you think that someone's a danger to someone, but they're poor, but you're not sure because they're just accused, there's no proof, they're just accused, put an ankle bracelet on them and have some type of device with the other spouse. And if that person gets too close, police are called, the spouse is now safe. If someone's a flight risk, ankle bracelet. If they cut the ankle bracelet off, now they're a felon, got that taken care of, or they go outside of the state, we find out where they are. Ankle bracelet is a very viable way, and most police stations already have it. Most districts already have it. It is fine.
In fact, when he should have spoken up about an individual who killed a cop, he chose not to. In fact, he pardoned that individual. But Marcia, in my county, and what I believe needs to occur statewide is we have to invest effectively in the appropriate representation at the time of arraignment, and throughout the judicial process. We need to ensure that individuals who are trapped in the criminal justice system have a support structure so they can find their way back to society and not return to jail. We do that in my county. Over the course of the last 8 years, this governor governor has forced more and more burden onto local jails across the state of New York, forcing them to grow their population. That's not a way to reform the criminal justice system.
Governor, you get 30 seconds.
If my opponent has makes a factual statement, it's by mistake. I did disagree with the parole board's release of Herman Bell, and he knows it.
Why did you pardon him?
This is a pure...
Why did you pardon him? You gave him a conditional pardon. You wouldn't agree to meet with the victims' families.
It's an independent board.
You could very well...
You should know if you read the law. Number two, the Trump administration's entire point of view. They are anti-woman, they are anti-LGBTQ, and they want to put more people in jail for lower-level offenses.
So, wow, so we don't care about cash bail at all. No one here does except me. Okay, so let's go off and talk about parole boards, and let's talk about LGBTQ, which is all important issues. But I thought we were talking about cash bail. We don't care about that. Well, I do.
Which is what my opponent supports, and that's the exact opposite direction. I've been closing prisons. We don't need to throw away young lives on low-level drug crimes, alternatives to incarceration, rehabilitation, and stop spending $50,000 a year on a prison cell and get a person into a more productive circumstance.
Governor, thank you very much.
His Majesty says that he cares about prison reform. Yet when it comes to prisoners, he hasn't decided in any way, shape, or form to tell law enforcement to stop arresting low-level criminals. He hasn't created any new programs that are throughout the entire country to show success in lowering our recidivism rate. He hasn't even given our corrections officers in any way, shape, or form a contract in over 2 years. He's in none of these things. There is no way that he's actually making any of this happen, but he stands here and says he cares about prisons? No. What he's done is close prisons to force the prison system to deal with people who have mental illness and people who have low-level crimes, all in the same exact world as our most violent criminals that we have in this state. And the people have to take care of them, the corrections officers, he's ignored. This is not criminal justice reform.
Rich?
So, Governor, your mass pardons of ex-cons has generated controversy because it restores their right to vote at the polls. Some of those pardoned are sex offenders whose polling place is often a school. Should this program be re-examined, and should people convicted of sex offenses be allowed to vote only by absentee ballot?
The point is, these are people who are on parole, who have served their time, they've been released. We're now trying to reintegrate them into society. And we spend a lot of money trying to reintegrate people into society so they don't commit another crime and there's not more recidivism. Giving them the right to vote after they have done their time and paid their price to society is a way of reintegrating them. Sex offenders can only vote in a supervised situation. And I would be against allowing a sex offender to go anywhere near a situation where there are children.
Mr. Molinaro.
Except you allowed exactly that to happen. 24,000 individuals, conditional pardon, many of which were sex offenders, rapists, murderers. And you not only allowed them to vote, you encouraged and instructed the probation department to register them to vote and to instruct them that if they vote in schools, they can vote after 7 p.m. You did so without going to
without children there.
There are no children in school after hours? When's the last time you took your kids to school? My kids are in school after hours all the time. But, sir, you allowed that to happen. You allowed that to happen, and it shouldn't have happened. When I'm governor of the state of New York, if you kill a cop, you do not return to society. If you are a sex offender, you do not get to...
That's not the law. You don't run the parole board. It's an independent entity. Or are you saying that you're going to interfere with an independent entity?
Current law says if you kill a cop, you do not return to society. There is a slice of individuals that you have allowed.
You're going back to the death penalty.
I would absolutely...
Yes, if you kill them, they won't return to society. No, you're right.
You pardoned 24,000 individuals and allowed them the right to vote, and it shouldn't have happened.
After parole, yes.
No, not after parole. They were on parole when you pardoned them.
Yes, after they did their time.
And to allow...
And we're trying to reintegrate them. How do you reintegrate somebody if you don't even let them vote? Yeah. Or do you want just a recidivism cycle so they go back and back and back?
No, sir.
Pardoning is not a bad thing by default, but each pardon should be on an individual basis. Is this individual, have they been wronged? Is something bad? Do you not get it? Is it unfair? It should be on an individual basis. Mass pardoning is a problem. Of course it is. Why would you do that? But not just that. Why would you mass pardon people and then on top of that, purposely do it prior to an election? This was crooked, this was bad, and shouldn't have been done. At the same point, there is a point that's accurate, which is once someone does their time and their parole is complete, then they should get all of their rights back. Of course they should. But you don't just want to randomly say, well, these 24,000 people, because I want the votes, we're going to give them the right to vote and pardon them. That's corrupt. That's wrong.
You allowed 24,000 people through a conditional pardon, many of which were sex offenders. You instructed them to vote.
The right to vote.
But you should have gone to the legislature. Is there no law you're willing to not bend or to break?
To go to the legislature when? So like when you were there and you took $70,000 in expenses, almost double your salary, one of the highest people taking per diems. Go to you in the legislature? No, thank you.
So you don't have an answer, so you just attacked him for being as corrupt as you. Okay.
Sir, you have raised $101 million.
You took $70,000.
9 individuals now found guilty of federal corruption charges.
I'm going to ring the bell and we're going to take a time out.
You didn't take $70,000 in per diem, Mr. Fiscal Conservative? You say one thing, you do another.
No, you're more corrupt. No, you're more corrupt. No, you're more corrupt. No, you're more corrupt.
That's not true.
All right, we're both taking a time out. The next question is for Mr. Molinaro. The cost of health care is out of control, but you support a single-payer health plan, which some call Medicare for all, knowing it could double the entire state budget of $168 billion, requiring massive tax hikes. Can New York afford this program?
New York cannot afford this program, not to mention the state of New York has a hard enough time getting the trains to run effectively in the city. To put the governor or the state government in charge of health care would be frightening. In fact, in this case, the governor's already begun to auction off sections of health care. In the case of Crystal Run, a private health care provider in the Hudson Valley, the state of New York, after private meetings with their senior officers, dedicated $25 million of taxpayer support in exchange for thousands of dollars of political contributions. We have seen a broken system, and I am not willing to allow that to be corrupted.
Wasn't this question about health care? So every time we have a question, we just go to, you're more corrupt?
And certainly New Yorkers cannot afford doubling their personal income tax to support a system that is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
You have 30 seconds.
Let me tell you why my opponent wouldn't answer the question. He's with Mr. Trump. There should only be health care for rich people. He voted against the health care exchange when he was in the New York State legislature, which ensures 4 million New Yorkers. Donald Trump just said he wants to allow the disallowance of pre-existing conditions and end the funding for the Affordable Care Act under Obama. They think if you're rich, you should be able to have health care. If you're poor, good luck, don't get sick.
Look, the reason why this is a bad idea isn't even just the money. The reason why it's a bad idea is because it's going to create a two-tiered system. It's already there now. If you look now, try finding a doctor who takes Medicaid now. You can find it, but it's tough. It's probably not in the right area, not the one you want, not the one you like. More and more limitations on what's happening. You do that, it will not be self-directed at all. The government is going to decide who you get and how you get and when you get. And most of the best doctors are going to decide to not take Medicaid or insurance at all. What happens now in Europe? You have supplemental insurance. What does that mean? That's rich people insurance. You have that kind of insurance, they take it. What's going to happen is the wealthy will get the best insurance and will get the best doctors, and those who aren't will get whatever's left. I don't want that. We have to change this system to allow everyone to have good care. That means making sure there's a difference between the health care insurance and health care. Let's fix the health care system to where it's not this horrible cartel system, but until it's a better system to where more people have more access. We do that, we can even fix Medicaid and give everyone an opportunity to have the best doctors.
Okay,
Marcia,
your time is up. Rich?
I'd like 15 seconds.
Okay, you have it.
I grew up on food stamps, sir. My mother struggled hard. I know exactly what it's like to be waiting online for Medicaid services.
Remember what it was like.
I remember exactly what it's like.
Well,
and
I've
seen your government dehumanize people waiting on lines for Medicaid all across the state of New York. I've seen kids that need developmental disability services.
So you want to end it?
I absolutely am committed to not only supporting that population, but expanding services, and I always have. For the last 8 years.
You'll expand Medicaid?
I will absolutely do more to ensure that
You'll expand Medicaid. I'm going to write that down. That's news.
Sir.
Please stop calling him sir. He doesn't respect you.
I will absolutely do more to ensure that the system more effectively assists those struggling and those who are poor, because I've never forgotten where I come from. I wasn't born on third base. I worked hard to get to this very place.
Yeah, neither was I.
Okay, Rich, next question.
Governor, opioids, pills, and heroin are killing people throughout the state. Do you support opening safe needle injection sites where addicts can also be approached for help? Do you have any other bold ideas to address the opioid crisis?
Yes, we do have bold ideas on the opioid crisis. We're working on a new model because it is very complicated and it's comprehensive. It is part of what Mr. Molinaro was talking about before. It is a mental health issue as well as a substance abuse issue. Sometimes there are behavioral issues. People are coming into emergency rooms. They're doing ad hoc determinations in emergency rooms. Depending on where you go is what referral you get. The safe injection sites are something I think we should look at. They are very controversial. They are very complicated. The federal government is decidedly against them and could close them down. But it's something we have the Department of Health working on in concert with New York City.
Absolutely not. We cannot give up on these individual lives. Opioid and heroin addiction is the public health crisis of our lifetime, and we are losing so many people. That means for us as a state, we ought to ensure that we train law enforcement to respond effectively. It means expanding access to Narcan. It means ensuring that we have 24/7 mental health services for folks all across the state of New York. Every county needs the ability to provide mobile intervention team, a stabilization and recovery center, so that folks have the support that they need. But what's most important is that we have to have an open conversation about the struggle that so many addicts have. That means recovery coaches. That means training and enhancing the tools and resources for families so that they know that we're on their side. We have to break through to ensure that we address the stigma and provide ultimately the help that these people who are struggling so hard deserve.
What you just heard both of them say is, we have to throw more money at the problem. That's all they said. We have to get this and buy that and train this and give that. Throw more money at the problem. It's been decades. We've been throwing money at it. It doesn't work. There are 3 things we need to do to really make this happen. Number 1, if local communities want to have these sites, they should be able to if they want. The governor shouldn't be deciding what's right or wrong for your community. Each community should decide. If you want those sites, you should have them. If you don't, you shouldn't. You should be finding ways to help the people who are in your world, your loved ones. Oasis has to go away. It should not be deciding how people get cured of their addiction. Addiction is a mental health and it is a medical problem. But more importantly, it's a happiness problem. It's people making mistakes and going to places they shouldn't go and doing things they shouldn't do. We need people to love each other and to help each other get better. That means localized control. That means nonprofit stepping in. That means charity stepping in. That means our local law enforcement should be facilitating these things to happen. It means stop putting people in jail for having a plant in their pocket. It means taking this as a real social problem. One more thing. It means legalizing cannabis and cannabis products. Cannabis products will be used for pain. Why does that matter? 80% of all of our addicts come because of a FDA-approved prescription drug for pain. If that was a cannabis product, the amount of addicts we have begins to go away. But not just that. A cannabis product can be used to help someone get off of a drug. It will mitigate the actual withdrawal symptoms. We can do that if we do those things. Get rid of Oasis. Stop the government at the top in Albany deciding what's right, what's wrong. Allow local nonprofits, charities to jump in and support also, and legalize cannabis products. You will find we can deal with the opioid crisis. You will see a tremendous decrease right away.
Governor, there's another drug question I'd like to talk to you about. Soon, New York is going to be surrounded by states that are legalizing recreational marijuana. Yet our state has some of the most restrictive laws on medical marijuana, not allowing prescriptions for stress or using edibles. Why isn't New York more progressive on the use of medical marijuana?
Well, medical marijuana, we are now. We're not for years. Mr. Molinaro voted against medical marijuana. He opposes it. Many members of the legislature stopped it for many, many years. That's why we didn't do it earlier, because my opponent voted against it as well as others. We now have medical marijuana. I believe it's helped many, many people. The next question that you're asking is legalizing overall recreational marijuana because it's supposed to be legal.
I guess I wonder why you don't ease up on the medical marijuana issue so that the people who need it for stress and other things can get it. The people who want to have edibles because it's easier can get it now before you legalize it.
Yeah, well, I think you should ask my opponent why he voted against it, because we now have it.
We don't have it. That's a dodge. What you have is a black market of cannabis products because you've made medical marijuana so hard to get as a license that only your cronies, only your buddies, your polilolos can get it.
And we have to obviously make sure there are controls because it's medical marijuana. It's not to sell on the street corner. But you should ask my opponent why he opposed it.
I absolutely support the expansion of medical marijuana so that patients that need access can get it. This state has done a horrible...
You didn't vote against it?
Sir, I've been in the state legislature for decades, so let's get...
You didn't vote against medical marijuana?
In 2018, I support the expansion of access for medical purposes.
That means he voted...
Excuse me, sir.
Did you support medical marijuana when you were in the assembly?
Marcia, if I could just finish...
Governor, let's let him finish the question.
Absolutely...
You just asked for help again? Mark, stop calling him sir. He doesn't respect you. Get it.
Support the expansion of medical marijuana for those that need it. There are so many who can't access it because of the overburdensome regulation that this state puts in place. But only 5 months ago, the governor actually had the same position I do on legalization, but in the midst of a Democratic primary, decided to have your Department of Health, the New York State's Department of Health, change its position. When I'm governor, we don't make decisions based on political expedience. We do it based on science, data, and fact.
Okay, and time is up, and you get the next question.
Thank you. Marcia, that is not it is not truthful.
Marcia, hand, remember?
It is truthful.
Mr. Molinaro did not support medical marijuana.
A decade ago.
Oh, so you didn't support it?
I support the expansion of medical marijuana today.
But you didn't when you were in the legislature, which was my point, and you said no. So you lied. But that's okay. It's not the first time.
I didn't.
Okay,
you do it well.
We're going to go to the next question.
I did not have the health department change their opinion.
You certainly did.
I asked for a study for the first time ever, and they came up with a study.
And they rushed it in the midst of a Democratic primary.
Okay. Truth matters, Mark.
It does, yes.
And here's a question for you. Education is critical to the democratic process and a growing economy. What solutions would you offer to troubled school districts like the one in Hempstead, Long Island, where they spend the same amount as an average school district, but the high school graduation rate, as revealed in a CBS 2 documentary, is a dismal 37%.
Yeah, the education statewide is so dictated from Albany down that school districts and teachers don't have the latitude to establish outcomes and then achieve success. So I believe in devolving some of that decision-making so that school districts, parents, and teachers have the relationship necessary, establish outcomes, and then create, by the way, a curriculum that gets kids inspired to learn. That includes, by the way, investing in vocational training and technical training so that kids who learn differently have that opportunity. Also, it means reviewing our financial structure, the way in which we fund education, so that we don't continue to see failing schools not get the resources they need. But our education system was once great when there was a symbiotic relationship between family, community, and business and education. We need to ensure that educational outcomes align with economic needs and economic goals. The other is that this state has perpetuated a separate but unequal form of education, general ed and special ed. I believe in integrating that because those who are living with special education needs, those living with developmental disabilities are being left behind, and parents are being forced to advocate with full hand-on combat to receive services. So that's a way to reinvigorate and to inspire kids to learn.
So you don't actually have an answer, and you decided to just go to special ed versus general ed and not talk about the system that we have right now, which is kids aren't graduating. How do we fix that?
Governor, I suspect you have a little bit of a rebuttal. You've been taking a lot of notes.
Look,
30 seconds.
It's nice to speak in flowery language about how you want to help things. But the truth is the extreme conservative wing that Mr. Molinaro, Mr. Trump represent.
Back to Trump. Got it.
Exclude everyone. They're anti-woman. They're anti-LGBTQ.
Didn't we go through this already? The anti-LGBT. Didn't we go through this already? I thought we were trying to figure out how to make our education system better. I thought that was the question.
He would even put women in shackles.
It's untrue, sir. That's untrue. That is untrue, and you continue.
Can I finish?
No, you can't.
May I finish?
In fact, you can.
I can't.
Well,
you don't make the rules.
You've interrupted me every time I've spoken.
We'll
sir.
do your shackle question in 1 second, okay?
You don't make the rules, and he's right. He makes the rules. Wow, this is all his show.
And the Trump administration has not been providing the assistance they need for education.
Marc, why are you here?
We have a terrible education equity gap, where we have richer districts who have one level of funding and poorer districts that have another level of funding, and that is not what New York is all about.
He's right. New York is about high taxes, no opportunity, and people leaving by the busload. Yep.
On the question of shackles, there was a bill.
There was no question of shackles.
There was a bill that you voted for that said female inmates could be shackled to a gurney during childbirth.
Listen, there were significant concerns regarding individual safety, but I find it highly hypocritical of you to be lecturing me about women's issues. With all due respect, sir, when women spoke up in your administration, when they were being harassed by senior staff, what did this administration do? They dismissed one woman and they had another one have another one assigned to a hall closet. By the way, when sexual harassment policy was being crafted, you wouldn't even allow the one female leader of the state legislature to be a part of the conversation, and you stood shoulder to shoulder with people like Shelley Silver, Jeff Klein, Sam Hoyt, and Vito Lopez. And sir,
wow, you guys know exactly who is more corrupt. You got names and you've got details. I love it. Did any of you bother to detail out an education plan?
When victims asked for public hearings, you said there's no need. No need? Albany is a cesspool of bad behavior. And when I'm governor, there's going to be more than just hearings. We're going to enforce the law so that men don't prey on women.
You're about fairy tales. You voted for a bill that shackled a woman to a gurney during childbirth. What kind of person would do that? This extreme conservative divisive cancer that you have brought to this state with Washington. You put children in cages in Washington, and you shackle women to gurneys in New York. We're not going to let that happen.
Sir,
that's not who we are as a people.
Move on.
It's not what we believe.
That is a wonderful.
It's disrespectful to women.
If there's one thing he knows about, it's disrespecting women. Right, Marcia?
It's disgusting to the values of this country to have a president take babies out of the arms of mothers and put them in cages and shackle women. Where do you think you want to take this country and state?
Sir, in 1997,
please.
In 1997, a 4-year-old girl and her mother were raped in my hometown. That has seared my memory,
sir. So you want to shackle the woman to a gurney?
I absolutely do not, sir. I do not, sir, and you know better than that.
Then why did you vote for the bill?
You absolutely understood, and exactly Governor Patterson.
Why did you vote for the bill?
Governor Patterson explained the same concerns which were addressed, and I support what he did to ensure that those women that are violent.
That is a lie.
It is not a lie.
Out of 201 legislators, only 20 voted for it. You were one of 20 out of 200. That's what you call extreme, my friend.
It is.
In your own party.
All right, well, we're going to move on now.
Okay, so now that we're done talking about shackling women and respecting women, I'm going to talk a little bit about education, which was the whole thing we was to start with. If we want to fix our actual education system, there are several things we have to do. But the number one concept is actually letting teachers teach. His Majesty's plan is literally this. It is, let's spend even more money. We right now spend $22,000 per kid, and we're ranked 37th in the country. But he wants to make sure we spend even more money, he's proud of that, so that we can have non-teachers teach teachers how to teach better. That's his current plan. And why that's doubly insulting is you're having non-teachers teach teachers, and the assumption is the system's failing because the teachers aren't good enough. Wow. And we wonder why we have teacher burnout, and we wonder why teachers are quitting, and we wonder why teachers are saying, I can't do this because of all the regulation, because of all the box checking. I'm the one who's saying, get rid of all standardized testing before high school, allowing teachers to actually teach their children and not have to teach the standardized tests, allowing now these administrators to actually leave, letting administrators go away. What does that mean? We actually have districts that have more administrators than teachers. That's shameful. We don't need extra grant writers and extra people to check boxes. We need teachers talking to kids. We need Common Core to go away. We need less strings. We need more local control of our schools. That will actually make better schools.
This next one goes to you, Governor. Mayor de Blasio has been dragging his feet in approving new charter schools. Do you believe in charter schools? And how would you get the mayor to increase space in city buildings for charter schools?
I will sit down and we will have a bottle of wine, the mayor and I.
You and the mayor are going to break bread and drink wine?
We're going to break bread. We're going to have a plate of pasta. Why?
Wow, so you're just going to do a bit here? This is a funny joke to you? You're going to talk about pasta and wine? Everyone knows you don't get along with de Blasio. And so now we literally have kids not being educated. We have a 30% increase in suicides in our state since the year 2000, to include children. We have teachers who are leaving left and right, a broken education system, and you think, let's do a bit. It'll be funny, ha. If you were gonna make magic happen, why didn't you make that magic happen 8 years ago when you first came in? Why didn't you make our children your priority then? But now you're gonna make them a priority? Keep doing your bit.
We're going to have a plate of pasta. We're going to have a bottle of wine. We're going to talk about it. The mayor was with me election night.
Forget the mayor. Do you believe in charter schools?
So everything is lovey-dovey. I support charter schools. I support choice in education. I support public education and public charter schools because we need choice. But primarily, 98% of our children go to public schools. And that's where we need funding and
So do you think there should be
funding.
more charter schools?
I support charter schools. Yes, I always have.
Okay, Mr. Molinaro.
I support charter schools and I support choice. I also support ensuring that our education produces real outcomes. And what we've seen across upstate New York and across much of the state is the deterioration of an education system because it's handcuffed by Albany bureaucracy. We have to more effectively work to give freedom and latitude at the local level so that teachers can teach and students have opportunities to learn. It means ripping out Common Core and focusing effectively on setting standards at the local level, tying educational outcomes with economic needs, and ensuring that we reinvest in special education.
What I support is a localized school district. Charter schools are probably good for some areas and maybe not good for others. I don't want to be the guy who supports either of them. I want to be the guy who allows a local school district to decide what's going to work best for their kids. It really is that simple.
Okay, the next question is from Rich.
So this question really is for both of you, okay? Politics today echo with insults, accusations, and disrespect.
No, really? I didn't see any of that today. We should be proud.
Even knowing that going negative is often successful, do you ever feel a need to elevate the conversation, or do nice guys finish last?
This is the reason why we want a powerful third party. When you only have two parties, and you spend your time saying the other guy's evil, if the other guy is so evil, there's only one guy left. But when there are two people left after you've said one guy is so evil, the vote can go either way. The negative campaigning, the mudslinging, isn't as effective when there's three parties. That's the advantage. That's the whole reason that you care about a third party, to make it so that negative campaigning doesn't work as much. If you've noticed, here today, all I've talked about is, wow, they're slinging mud. Let me give you some ideas. Being a third party means I have to be more positive. I have to have actual ideas. So, yeah, I'm a nice guy, but I'm not finishing last.
I was first elected to office as a 19-year-old. I served in a small village in upstate New York where you run without party affiliation. I've spent every day of my adult life trying to get people to work together to solve problems. As governor of the state of New York, I absolutely want to ensure that we tone down the rhetoric, that we stop the escalation of hate, anger, and violence, and that we do more. We do more to bring people together to solve the important problems that face us. That means collaborating, not dictating. It means ending the bullying and the threatening and the dismissing dismissing of those with whom we might disagree.
Do you know who you're running against?
That's what I think leaders do. And as governor of the state of New York, I'm going to lift us up. I'm going to lift us up to confront the challenges that face the people of the state of New York by toning it down and working across party lines. Anybody who has a stake in the game should have an opportunity to sit at the table. The governor only 4 years ago said if you were too far right of center, you have no place in New York. Well, I would say to my Democratic friends, if you're too far left of center, you have every place in New York. That at the end of the day, when we put aside our differences to work honestly and earnestly towards solving problems, we can absolutely overcome any challenges. This is the greatest state in the greatest nation the world has ever known.
Yeah, I think those are beautiful flowery words. I think it's the exact opposite of everything he represents and Trump represents.
Untrue.
Okay, I get it. Trump matters. How about some answers? Give us some answers. How about that?
I think what
Your
Trump
continued effort, sir, he didn't come to my bachelor party, he came to yours.
Yeah, I don't support him politically. You do. I think what they are doing is reprehensible. And there are no nice words to take care of this. You're against a woman's right to choose. He voted 5 times against equal pay for a woman. He voted to put a woman in shackles. He voted 9 times against members of the LGBTQ community. He voted 3 times against marriage equality. They want to end health care for poor people.
That is untrue.
They're putting children in cages.
That is untrue. You are signing
they're putting children in. Let me finish, Mark.
When are you going to stop lying? When are you going to stop lying,
You're not putting children in cages?
I am not, sir, and I never would.
Okay. And Trump didn't?
Governor, I have objected to those policies.
That is abusing people.
Governor.
What was the question?
You continue to misrepresent.
Right, may I finish?
No, you continue to misrepresent.
You have a program where they will hurt the economic viability of this state with SALT. Which is going to raise taxes 30%. My fiscal conservative friends are going to raise state taxes 30%. Rich, I'm here to fight for New Yorkers. I am a New Yorker. Their rights are being abused. This is a divisive cancer that these people have brought.
And
we have to win November 6th.
You have escalated it.
It's not just Democrats. You're going to see a lot of Republican moderates come out. A lot of independents come out and say, I don't want this hate. I don't want this anger. I don't want this division. This is not who we're about.
Yeah, you are absolutely going to see a lot of Republican moderates, Democrat moderates, independents come out. Yeah, and they're voting Larry Sharpe because they don't want to see this divisiveness, which you just talked about. What you guys just did, they're all going to come out and they're voting for me.
Governor, we're going to give Mr. Molinaro 15 seconds.
You have sought to escalate it. You have sought to escalate it. And, sir, your description of my life and record is so dishonest that it's absolutely shameful.
You didn't see this coming? You walked into the octagon with this man and you didn't see it coming? And you thought you could win this debate? You didn't see this coming? Come on.
It just is. There are no words to describe how
you supported Trump.
Okay,
on this show, you said it.
I gave you each more time. We're going to move on.
You just said it yourself.
We are moving on.
Live with your decision.
We're moving on. Mr. Molinaro, how people express their sexual identity has major social and financial implications. President Trump wants to change the definition of transgenders to roll back protections under federal civil rights law. He wants to identify people's sex by the genitalia they're born with. Do you support that or not?
Well, I don't support rolling back the protections for individuals, regardless of their gender expression. And certainly, with all due respect to the governor, my position on same-sex marriage was the same as Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's at the time. The day it became law was the day I celebrated it as a civil right. And as governor of the state of New York, I will absolutely defend the individual rights and freedoms of New Yorkers without hesitation. It's my job, and it is the job of the governor to enforce all of the laws.
Roe v. Wade?
I support that it is settled law and will defend that.
It's not settled law.
It is, sir. It has been settled law since...
No, it is not settled law.
Sir, it has been settled...
Kavanaugh says it's not settled law.
Governor, we have to let him finish.
You're right, finish.
Thank you for letting him finish, Your Majesty. Thank you.
It is settled law in the state of New York, and I will absolutely defend it. But it is entirely hypocritical for the governor to suggest what he's suggesting. I absolutely will defend the law. This governor has allowed individuals in his own administration to bend the rules. In fact, even the smallest things, Governor, you had the Department Department of Transportation employees handing out campaign literature at a parade, when you wanted to ensure that I Love New York signs filtered he bent the rules in procurement to allow things to happen that are not permitted.
15 seconds.
Okay. First of all, you are wrong when you say Roe v. Wade is settled law. Kavanaugh said it's not settled law. The Supreme Court could change it. We would then have to change it in New York.
You'd have to defend it in New York, as I would.
No.
Yes, sir, you would.
No.
Yes, it is settled law in the state of since 1974.
15 seconds
We'd have to change. No. Excuse me, Marcia. We have to change it. You opposed. You did the same thing that Trump did when you voted against gender. That was against transgender people, and that's what Trump did.
Rich Lamb has the next question.
You did the same thing.
All right. I guess since we're done yelling at each other, I'll try to answer the question. Gender identity is very important. And while I, as a libertarian, I don't like protected classes at all, but if we're going to have them, they include everyone, to include members of transgender community, of course. You should be judged how you want to be judged. You should be viewed how you want to be viewed. Of course you should. I wouldn't want to roll back any of those.
Governor, you reportedly like to say the Buffalo Bills are the only true New York pro football team. Is that accurate?
Never said that. Wow. You'll get the Giants and the Jets will crucify me. I ask people, what is the only New York team that plays in New York? That's the Buffalo Bills.
All right.
Close enough.
So, for the past 46 years, the Bills have been playing home games in the same stadium in the Buffalo suburb of Orchard Park. There is no question they need a new stadium, and it'll cost over $1 billion. Our question is, should New York State pay for the new Bills stadium or let Erie County and the team owner foot that bill?
I'm not at the new stadium point yet. We worked very hard to keep the Bills. We've worked very hard in upstate New York. Out-migration was a very big problem for many years. Buffalo was sort of the epicenter of it. We've actually turned it around. The population in Buffalo went up. Young people going to Buffalo went up. Jobs are up. Unemployment is down. Home values are up. Keeping the Buffalo Bills there is very important. And we worked very hard. Mr. Wilson, the owner, passed away. The Pagulas bought it. We invested in the stadium.
Ah, yes, you invested. Always remember, when you ever hear invested or funded, that means took your money and gave it to somebody else.
It's about 1,600 jobs to keep the Bills. There's a great psychic value. I love the Bills, but I'm not at a new stadium.
Okay, you have 15 seconds.
Well, as a lifelong Giants fan, I don't want anyone to think I don't support the Bills. I'm not ready to embrace a new stadium. But with all due respect, sir, your policies have hollowed out the state of upstate New York. We lead the nation in losing population to every other state in America. In fact, lead the nation, despite only the state of Alaska, I think, outpaces us. But there are whole communities being hollowed out because the economic development policies that you have embraced have produced more indictments than they produced real jobs.
Okay, we're going to go now to our lightning round. We're running out of time, Governor. I know you have a lot to say.
There are more jobs in New York today
Don't
than
make me
ever
punch you
in
out.
history.
Wow, he went so far. Marsh is about to hit him back. Okay, that's great. I love it. Look, this question was actually about, do we support New York State paying for a stadium? No, of course not. Why in the world would I decide that everyone's taxpayer money they're giving to me as governor, that I'm going to give it out to some private company? No, of course not. I hope the Bills stay. I want the Giants to come back. I'm a Giant fan. I want the Jets to come back. I want them all to come back. I just won't bribe them. I've got to make New York State a great place to where they want to be here, to where we stop losing all the people we're losing, and we have more people coming back, and all of our football teams coming back. That's what I want.
70% of those jobs, Marc.
Don't make me beat you up. We're going to the lightning round.
70% of those jobs have been downstate.
Mr.
In fact,
Molinaro.
because of a decrease in population upstate, we have less people and therefore less unemployment.
We've turned it around.
No, you have not, sir.
Time is running out.
New York.
Time is running out. We are going to our what we call our lightning round, or short answers.
Short answers. Are we good at that?
So, Governor, if you won the lottery, what was the first thing you would buy? One word.
The first thing I would buy?
Yeah.
I'd put it in a trust fund for my kids.
Mr. Molinaro.
I'd put it towards my children's education.
A TV station so I could embarrass you guys.
So, Mr. Molinaro, is Dutchess County upstate or downstate?
It is where upstate meets downstate.
Good answer. How about you, Governor?
I'll take Marc's answer.
Okay, so
We agree.
Depends on where you are in New York. If you're from the Bronx like me, it's upstate. If you're from North Country, Western New York, it's downstate.
So, Governor, if and when you deliver our State of the State message, what would be your ideal room temperature?
69 degrees.
69 degrees. And how about you? If you deliver the State of the State, what
68 degrees, and I'll be delivering it in the assembly chambers.
Okay.
Cool enough so I don't have to wear a tie.
Governor,
Right back with the legislature.
you say you're a sausage aficionado.
Yes.
So besides Italian sausage, what do you like?
I like kielbasa, but I do prefer Italian sausage. I'm true to my heritage and my grandmother's and my mother's.
And you, sir?
We're having a sausage question. I always loved my grandmother's Italian sausage.
We're doing a sausage question. We got almost nothing done in this debate at all except throw mud at each other. And we're doing a sausage question now. This another bit?
Okay, so here we go. Governor, what song personifies you or your campaign, and can you sing a few bars?
Empire State of Mind, I'm not singing.
Oh, come on.
No.
You can do it.
No.
Oh, you're a coward.
In the
Okay.
shower, I can do it.
Okay, Mr. Molinaro, what
Don't
song?
stop believing, but I'm not singing.
Come on.
Agreement.
No, thank you.
two
Thanks.
cowards here.
I'm having a hard enough time making it through the debate. I don't want to sing.
Yeah, you're having a real hard time. I still don't know why you even showed up. Absolutely. But my song? Not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore. Can't I get you to sing just a few bars of Empire State of Mind? I'm not singing.
Okay, so here we go. Governor, what song personifies you or your campaign, and can you sing a few bars?
No, we ain't gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore.
Can't I get you to sing just a few bars of Empire State of Mind?
No, that's a campaign killer.
Yes, and I'm gonna kill your campaign with it.
All right, fine. We're going to go to the end of the debate.
Unless you come to the shower.
All right, we're done.
Did he just invite her to the shower? This is the guy who has the women's equality party line? Great way to end it. Not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore.